For years, he was known as a loyal cartel enforcer, the kind of man trusted to protect territory and eliminate problems. Violence was part of the job, but then the war came to his own family. One attack left his son dead and a child caught in the crossfire. In the cartel world, losses like that don't end quietly. They echo, and in this case, the response was so ruthless that stories about it still circulate in Sinaloa today. What started as a cartel feud quickly turned into something much more personal. Jose Manuel Torres Felix was born on February 28, 1958, deep in the mountains of Cosala, Sinaloa. And if you know anything about that part of Mexico, you already know it's not some bright lights, big city environment. Cosala sits tucked inside the Sierra Madre Occidental, rugged land, winding dirt roads, small communities where everybody knows everybody. Back in the day, people survived off mining and farming. That was the official story. But up in those highlands, isolation became opportunity. The same mountains that made it hard to build a regular economy made it perfect for something else. Marijuana fields and opium poppy crops blended into the terrain. By the 1960s, Sinaloa wasn't just another rural state anymore. It was quietly becoming the backbone of a growing global drug pipeline. Manuel wasn't some outsider who wandered into that world by accident. He was born into the Torres family, a name that would later carry serious weight inside the Sinaloa cartel. His brother, Javier Torres Felix, better known in the streets as LJT, was already making moves. Javier wasn't just a foot soldier. He handled logistics and security, working closely with the top tier of the organization, including Ismael El Mayo Zambada and Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Those weren't regular bosses. Those were architects of an empire. Details about Manuel's childhood are thin, no long interviews, no emotional backstories, no clean paper trail. And honestly, that silence says a lot. In Sinaloa's trafficking culture, privacy isn't just personal, it's protection. In regions where poverty meets isolation, the informal economy, let's call it what it is, contraband, often looks like the only ladder out. By the 1990s, Manuel wasn't just around the game, he was in it. He aligned himself with the heavyweights under Mayo and Chapo, stepping into a cartel structure that was already evolving into something much bigger than a street operation. To understand Manuel's rise, you have to understand the machine he plugged into. The Sinaloa cartel isn't a corner crew. It's widely considered the most powerful trafficking organization in the Western Hemisphere. Think less neighborhood gang, more corporate network, except the product is narcotics and the boardroom decisions are backed by rifles. Their portfolio is broad and calculated. High-profit drugs like fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, and heroin sit at the top. Marijuana remains part of the legacy trade. Then there are the side operations, local distribution, territorial taxation, even charging human smugglers fees just to move through certain corridors. Nothing moves for free. The roots of this empire stretch back generations in Sinaloa. Cannabis and poppy cultivation were once small-time survival tactics for rural farmers. But in the 1960s and 70s, those survival tactics turned into organized trafficking networks. One of the early pioneers was Pedro Aviles Perez. He was among the first to scale marijuana trafficking in a serious way, and through family connections, he helped introduce a young Joaquin Guzman to the business. That mentorship would echo for decades. When Aviles was killed in a police shootout in 1978, it marked the end of one era, but the blueprint was already laid down. By the late 70s, Mexican traffickers weren't thinking small anymore. They began transporting cocaine for suppliers coming out of Colombia and Central America. The power base shifted toward Guadalajara, where a new alliance formed. Three major figures rose during that period: Rafael Caro Quintero, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, and Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo. With help from Honduran trafficker Juan Ramon Mata Ballesteros, they built direct bridges to the Medellin cartel. Cocaine shipments started flowing by air and sea into Central America and Mexico, then traveling overland into the United States. The pipeline was set. Then 1985 changed everything. The kidnapping and murder of DEA agent Enrique Camarena sent shockwaves through both governments. The fallout dismantled what was known as the Guadalajara cartel. Under intense U.S. pressure, Mexico cracked down. Leaders were arrested or forced into hiding. With the old guard fractured, territories were divided. The Arellano Felix brothers tightened their grip on Tijuana. The Carrillo Fuentes family claimed Ciudad Juarez, and back in Sinaloa, Guzman and Hector Luis Palma Salazar rebuilt their base. While other factions scrambled just to survive, the Sinaloa network started thinking long-term. They partnered with the Valencia family, operators of the Milenio Cartel in Michoacan. That alliance wasn't just muscle, it was strategy. Control of Pacific ports meant control of shipping lanes. More importantly, it opened doors to precursor chemicals from China. That shift pushed them deep into the methamphetamine trade, a business with staggering profit margins. Inside that system is where Manuel Torres Felix found his footing. Before becoming a high-level figure, he started as a sicario, a cartel enforcer, but he wasn't average muscle. He developed a reputation for being highly skilled with firearms, disciplined, and relentless. His role was clear: protect cartel interests and eliminate threats. In Sinaloa, that kind of reputation travels fast. By the early 2000s, Manuel Torres Felix wasn't just the guy kicking in doors anymore. He had leveled up. He was running his own small operations, calling shots in certain pockets of Sinaloa. But even as he climbed, that old reputation stuck to him. In the 90s, he had built his name off pure enforcement, protecting cartel property with cold, calculated violence. The Mexican government took notice and stamped him as a high-value target. That kind of label doesn't come quietly. It means surveillance. It means task forces. It means your name floating around in rooms full of people planning your downfall. And it wasn't just the government hunting him. On Valentine's Day in 2001, while most people were thinking about flowers and dinner plans, a hit squad from the Tijuana cartel rolled into a ranch called El Limoncito de Alaya in Sinaloa. Their assignment was simple: eliminate Manuel and his brother Javier. Clean job, no witnesses, message sent. But the brothers weren't there. Instead of walking away empty-handed, the gunmen chose terror. They opened fire on locals, killing 12 innocent villagers. It was a brutal overreaction tied to a petty dispute over drug shipments. Reports later pointed to Ramon Arellano Felix as the one who ordered the attack. In that world, ego and business mix in dangerous ways. When pride gets bruised, blood usually follows. By this point, Manuel was widely known by his street names, LM1 and El Ondiato. Inside the Sinaloa cartel, he wasn't just another armed body in a convoy. He ran a specialized cell with serious autonomy in the heart of Sinaloa. He operated like a high-level lieutenant, handling logistics, security, and enforcement. His job was to make sure shipments moved smoothly and enemies stayed quiet. Even with all that independence, he ultimately answered to Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Loyalty mattered, structure mattered, and Manuel's crew was considered the glue inside the cartel's internal network. They weren't just transporting product, they were maintaining order in chaotic territory. They protected routes. They secured distribution lines. They made sure money flowed back without interruption. That consistency is a big reason the Sinaloa cartel stayed resilient, even while fighting violent turf wars against rivals. Manuel's leadership style wasn't distant or corporate. He stayed close to the action. He was known for being hands-on and ruthless, not only toward enemies, but sometimes within his own ranks. He moved with a tight circle of armed bodyguards. When security forces eventually clashed with him, the scene told its own story. 3 of his bodyguards dead and piles of cash recovered. That's the kind of environment he lived in daily. Under his direction, his group focused on locking down northern Sinaloa. Places like Oso Viejo became operational hubs. From there, drugs moved north and cash moved south. It was a cycle, and his job was to keep it spinning. Inside the cartel's decentralized structure, Manuel stayed aligned with the Zambada faction, but he wasn't boxed in. He also worked alongside operatives connected to Joaquin El Chapo Guzman when it made sense. That middle positioning gave him flexibility. He could move resources where needed and handle sensitive financial tasks for top-tier leadership. Public records don't lay out exact dollar figures tied strictly to his cell, but the scale was massive. Multi-ton cocaine shipments, millions in revenue cycling through their hands. It was a family operation. Manuel worked closely with his brothers, Javier and Luis. Together, they managed the intake and redistribution of drug profits for the Zambada Garcia organization, the powerhouse core inside Sinaloa's structure. Their role in managing that cash pipeline made them critical pieces of the system. It also made them targets internationally. Javier eventually faced U.S. indictments related to conspiracy to launder and distribute drug proceeds. That kind of attention from across the border meant the pressure was no longer local, it was global. Then came January 27th, 2004. In the rural community of La Tula, just outside Culiacan, an elite Mexican army unit known as GAFE moved in. Their target was Javier Torres Felix. His security team wasn't about to let him go quietly. Around 30 gunmen engaged the soldiers in a fierce shootout, creating enough chaos for Javier to escape toward a safe house in the city. But escapes in that world rarely last. Later that same day, the army tracked him down in the Colinas de San Miguel neighborhood and arrested him. By the afternoon, he was on a plane to Mexico City, handed over to federal prosecutors. The following morning, around 10 a.m. on January 28, 2004, Javier was transferred to Reclusorio Norte in Mexico City and placed in solitary confinement under heavy guard. Authorities considered moving him to the maximum security prison known as La Palma, given his influence and risk level, but he remained at Reclusorio Norte for most of his detention in Mexico. Then intelligence surfaced that raised eyebrows. Reports suggested Javier had allegedly attempted to bribe officials with $1.2 million to orchestrate a prison escape planned for Christmas Day in 2004. Whether desperation or confidence, it showed he wasn't ready to accept his situation quietly. For nearly 3 years, he fought extradition to the United States. And when I say fought, I mean he dragged it out every way he could. Legal battles piled up, appeals got filed, lawyers went back and forth. Every argument possible was put on the table. But sooner or later, the walls started closing in. See, Javier wasn't just some random guy in the operation. He was El Mayo's top lieutenant, the right-hand man, the one trusted with real power. He oversaw operations across southern Sinaloa and controlled major shipments moving through Baja California Sur straight into the United States. That's not a small role, that's structure-level authority. So when he got arrested, it wasn't just another headline. It created a vacuum. And in organizations like this, vacuums don't stay empty for long. Manuel stepped in and took control. And the Torres cell, they didn't crumble. They didn't panic. If anything, they tightened up. Manuel wasn't just holding a title. He managed key drug routes across Sinaloa at a time when internal tensions were rising and rival groups were circling. The Torres crew had two main responsibilities: move product and protect the plaza. And in northern Sinaloa, protecting the plaza meant violence. They used heavy-handed enforcement to keep rivals like the Beltran Leyva organization from creeping into their territory. Public indictments don't list neat shipment totals tied specifically to Manuel's cell, but the broader picture is clear. During that era, the Sinaloa cartel was flooding the market with methamphetamine and moving massive quantities of cocaine into the United States. Under leaders like Manuel, the Federation strengthened its grip on the U.S. drug trade throughout the 2000s. Then 2008 hit, and everything cracked. That year marked the violent split between Sinaloa and their former allies in the Beltran Leyva organization. The arrest of Alfredo Beltran Leyva shattered old loyalties and sparked a war that tore through Sinaloa and neighboring states. What used to be business partnerships turned into kill orders. Manuel, already a top-tier enforcer under Ismael El Mayo Zambada, found himself right in the center of it. His role was simple but brutal. Push back. Stop the blow from taking over key corridors that fed northbound routes into the United States. When the Civil War exploded inside the Federation, Manuel stepped fully into his reputation. He wasn't just coordinating from behind the scenes. He directed commandos, led counterattacks, and became known for ruthless efficiency. It's during this period that his nickname El Ondiato, the crazy one, really stuck. His violence didn't feel calculated to outsiders, it felt personal, unrestrained. For him, the mission was clear: protect the plaza for the bosses who built it. Anyone stepping into that territory was considered fair game. That included rival traffickers, local police, federal agents, and even military personnel. Some clashes reportedly left casualties that never made it into official military reports. But war always swings both ways. From the moment the split happened in 2008, the Torres family became prime targets. Rivals hit back hard, reportedly using a specialized squad known as Los Charritos, tied to the Araujo family and backed by Gonzalo El Chalo Araujo. On April 4th, just as the conflict was heating up, violence struck close to home. Joel Torres Jimenez, the 19-year-old son of Javier, was ambushed outside a pool hall in Colonia Guadalupe, Victoria. Against the odds, he survived. 2 weeks later, on April 18th, the war turned deeply personal for Manuel. His 20-year-old son, Atanasio Torres Acosta, known as El Taquio, was driving through the Montebello district in Culiacan. In the car with him were his sister and his aunt. Gunmen linked to the Beltran Leyva organization intercepted them near the health ministry building. At first, the attackers attempted a kidnapping, but Atanasio resisted. The moment he made it clear he wasn't going quietly, the gunmen opened fire. He was killed instantly. His sister was wounded in the right arm and shoulder. Their aunt was shot in the leg. When authorities later located the getaway vehicle, they reportedly found an AK-47 and a banner carrying a direct message aimed at Manuel. It wasn't just a hit, it was a message. From that point forward, something shifted in him. Atanasio had been involved in cartel activities from a young age. Being born into the Torres Felix family meant inheriting both status and danger. In that world, risk is part of the job description. Sons of traffickers grow up knowing they are targets. It's a pattern seen across cartel dynasties. But there was another layer to that April attack. During the same ambush, Atanasio's young sister Alondra, only 4 years old, was struck in the arm so severely that she later required an amputation, an innocent child caught in crossfire. For many observers, that injury marked the true breaking point. Losing a son already involved in the trade is one kind of pain. Watching a small child permanently maimed in a calculated attack is something else entirely. In the days that followed, the retaliation was swift and savage. Manuel reportedly unleashed every sicario under his command with a single objective: find anyone connected to the BLO, Los Zetas, or anyone suspected of assisting them. Victims were allegedly dragged to ranch properties under his control. What happened there became part of local legend, accounts of prolonged torture and executions meant to send a message. Soon, mutilated bodies began appearing across Culiacan, often accompanied by notes referencing his son's killing. For Manuel, this was no longer just cartel warfare. It became personal vengeance layered on top of organizational conflict. The broader war between factions was still raging, but he was fighting a separate war of his own. One of the most notorious cases linked to this period involved Municipal Police Commander Roberto Carlos Barcelo Villagran. His body was discovered alongside 2 others in the trunk of a vehicle, showing signs of extreme mutilation. The brutality shocked even a region accustomed to violence. Culiacan began to feel like a dumping ground. Bodies appeared in public spaces. Some showed signs of torture. Others were burned or shot. In certain cases, victims were left at or near the site where Atanasio had been attacked, reinforcing the message. Despite the chaos, Manuel himself rarely moved openly within the city. Local accounts described him as almost ghost-like. He preferred the mountainous terrain near Cosala, territory he knew intimately. Those mountains were his home ground, his refuge, and his operational base. From that stronghold, he continued operating as a top lieutenant under El Mayo Zambada. While the Sinaloa cartel fought to maintain its dominance against rival factions, Manuel Torres Felix fought with something deeper driving him: grief, rage, and a need to answer what he saw as a personal affront to his family's name. By September 2008, the situation wasn't just business anymore. It turned personal. The Mexican army pulled up on the El Carrizal ranch in Sinaloa, boots heavy, rifles ready. They were hunting for one man. They didn't find Manuel Torres Felix that day, but they didn't leave empty-handed either. What they uncovered was serious. A mountain of weapons, ammunition stacked like they were preparing for war, and something even more powerful than bullets: photographs. One picture in particular changed everything. It showed Manuel Torres Felix standing alongside his nephew, Misael Torres Urrea, the man people on the streets knew as M2. On September 20th, 2008, the army released that image to the media, hoping somebody, somewhere, would recognize a face and make a call. They wanted the public to help corner him. They had no idea that photo would take on a life of its own. Almost overnight, the image exploded across social media. It became fuel for narco corridos, a symbol passed around like folklore. And the wild part, it wasn't some flashy publicity stunt. the military found it during that same ranch raid, sitting there among rifles and ammo crates. That moment marked the shift. The spotlight didn't just turn on Manuel, it locked onto him and refused to blink. Then came the spring of 2010, right in the middle of election season. What had once been business ties between powerful families turned into blood ties. Manuel became officially connected to the legendary Ismael Zambada Garcia, better known as El Mayo, when one of El Mayo's sons married Manuel's daughter. This wasn't just alliance anymore, this was family. And in that world, family means protection, loyalty, and shared enemies. But while those bonds were tightening at home, something bigger was brewing up north. Back in early 2011, Manuel Torres Felix was practically invisible on the official radar of Mexico's Attorney General's office. On paper, he barely existed. No major active cases, no loud federal manhunt, just a ghost moving through Sinaloa. That changed on June 1st. The Obama administration stepped in and officially labeled Manuel Torres Felix, alongside Gonzalo Inzunza, known as El Macho Prieto, as major targets under the Kingpin Act. And when the United States pulls that card, it's not small talk. The Kingpin Act is basically financial warfare. Once your name lands there, every asset tied to U.S. jurisdiction gets frozen. Every business connection gets cut. No American citizen or company can legally touch you. You're stamped as a specially designated national, the highest level narcotics target. There's a cold saying about that list. There are only two exits: prison or a coffin. From that moment, the cat and mouse game wasn't local anymore. It went international. The irony? While Washington was treating him like public enemy number one, back in Sinaloa, his official criminal record looked almost laughable. The only documented conviction authorities could really point to was an old firearm charge from years ago. Ancient history. But intelligence reports told a very different story. Once that U.S. designation hit, Manuel disappeared deeper into the hills. He lived in El Salto de Mata, constantly on the run, moving through the Valle de San Lorenzo like a shadow. The Mexican military and federal police weren't chasing rumors anymore. They were hunting a high-level operator inside the Sinaloa cartel, a man believed to be part of the inner machinery. And this chase didn't start in 2012. It stretched back years. As far back as March 2001, security forces were already tearing through parts of Sinaloa looking for Manuel and his brother Javier. They were investigating criminal networks bold enough to operate near police training grounds. Even then, it was clear he was on the radar. But every time authorities got close, he slipped away. Fast forward to February 2012, intelligence units pinpointed La Higuera de El Salado. This wasn't random, it was targeted. The Army and Marines flooded Valle de San Lorenzo and surrounding regions. Cartel violence was boiling over, and Manuel was high on the priority list. Still, he stayed in the wind. That's what made him so difficult to catch. These weren't city blocks with cameras on every corner. These were rural strongholds, hills, brush, tight-knit communities where loyalty runs deep. The terrain favored the hunted. Then came October 13th, 2012. 2 a.m. near Oso Viejo in Culiacan. Desert quiet, darkness thick, and suddenly, gunfire. Mexican army personnel intercepted a group of armed suspects, and the night exploded into a full-on firefight. Early reports confirmed they had run straight into a Sinaloa cartel cell. Not just random foot soldiers either. This unit was operating under the command of Manuel Torres Felix. For years, he had maneuvered, dodged, and blasted his way out of traps. They called him LM1, El Ondiato. He knew those hills like the back of his hand. But this time, the military wasn't improvising. They had been laying groundwork for days. Special Forces and the 9th Military Zone quietly seeded the area with troops. It was a textbook pincer move. At daybreak, one unit advanced through Tacuichamona toward Oso Viejo. Another descended from Quila. They closed in from two sides, forming a wall of steel. Even with all his experience, there was nowhere left to run. When the clash peaked, Manuel jumped from his vehicle and tried to disappear into the brush on foot, but the trap had already snapped shut. He was cut down by gunfire on that hillside. The official post-mortem later documented 6 bullet wounds, all entry and exit, thorax, abdomen, left arm, left thigh, and lower leg. The cause of death, laceration of both lungs. He was found lying on his back, no cranial fractures noted. He fell where he stood. When the smoke cleared, authorities recovered vehicles and an arsenal from the scene. On him, they found nearly $10,000 in US cash, more than 23,000 pesos, suspected cocaine, 2.38 super pistols, and additional ammunition. 3 men, believed to be part of his personal security detail, were arrested on site. And this time, officials weren't taking risks with the aftermath. After the infamous incident where the body of Heriberto Lascano disappeared from a funeral home, authorities made sure there would be no repeat. Manuel's body was transported under heavy military escort and guarded around the clock at the Sinaloa medical examiner's office. By morning, State Attorney Marco Antonio Higuera Gomez addressed the press cautiously. Identification was pending, but the army was confident. Soon after, Manuel's sister arrived and formally identified him. Confirmation came. Manuel Torres Felix was dead. According to Mexico's defense ministry, known as Sedena, his death represented a significant blow to the Sinaloa cartel. Officials described him as a key operator and right-hand figure to Ismael Zambada Garcia. They claimed he handled major administrative and logistical responsibilities within the organization. But outside of official statements, reality is harder to measure. The Sinaloa cartel is vast, structured, layered. Losing one high-ranking member, even an important one, rarely collapses an empire overnight. Operations adapt, roles shift, power recalibrates. Still, the message was clear. The Mexican government had struck deep inside Sinaloa on home turf. After the smoke cleared on October 13, 2012, Manuel Torres Felix's story didn't end in the hills of Sinaloa. His body was taken to the San Martin funeral home in Culiacan, and that's where things got real quiet. And now, usually when a big cartel figure falls, the funeral turns into a whole production. Banda music blasting, gunshots popping into the sky, streets flooded with people trying to show face. But this time, it felt different, almost muted. There were no live bands playing corridos, no farewell gunfire. The loudest thing in the area wasn't music, it was the military presence. Soldiers posted up heavy around the Guadalupe neighborhood, checkpoints locked in, watching every car that rolled through. They were clearly bracing for chaos, but the chaos never came. The only thing excessive about that day was the sea of flowers. Massive arrangements followed him all the way to Jardines del Humaya Cemetery, where he was laid to rest beside his son, Atanasio. Flowers stacked high, colors everywhere, petals speaking louder than the crowd ever did. And that's the strange part. For a man with a reputation like his, the turnout was surprisingly light. If someone didn't know his background, they might have thought it was the funeral of a respected businessman, not a feared operator. Even the soldiers seemed caught off guard. They had reserve forces ready, expecting waves of mourners. When those waves never showed, they quietly repositioned their units to the outskirts, just staying alert out of caution. But don't get it twisted. The money still flowed. Local flower shops made a killing. Huge arrangements dedicated to El Ondiato and M1 filled the funeral space. Some displays featured 500 roses, costing over 10,000 pesos. Other tributes pushed past 30,000 pesos easy. When everything was tallied, the private service, the burial, the construction of his mausoleum, the cost landed around 620,000 pesos. It was a quiet goodbye for a man who lived loud. Then, just 4 days later, Culiacan woke up to something that shook the city in a different way. 3 narcomantas appeared overnight, big banners hung in high traffic spots so nobody could miss them. One stretched across a footbridge along Emiliano Zapata near Lomas Boulevard, another near La Lomita Church, one more by the military college on Calzada Heroico. And the message? It was direct, personal, aimed straight at Ismael Zambada Garcia. The banner claimed that El Mayo had left Manuel to die. It accused him of betrayal, of sacrificing him the same way others supposedly had been sacrificed before. It even carried a chilling sign-off, as if Manuel himself was speaking from beyond the grave. Authorities moved fast. The PME units tore the banners down quickly, trying to limit the spectacle. But by then, the message had already done its job. People had read it, photos were taken. The rumor mill was spinning heavy, so who put them up? 2 main theories started floating around. First angle, psychological warfare. Some believed the BLO and Zeta Alliance was behind it. At the time, they were locked in a brutal conflict with the Sinaloa cartel. Stirring paranoia inside the leadership would be a smart move. Divide them from within, make them question each other. That kind of propaganda had worked before in Mexico's cartel wars. Second angle, loyalists. Some thought the banners came from Manuel's own people. In their eyes, he had been set up, betrayed, and this was their way of calling out the boss without saying his name directly. Now, if enemies were behind it, it fits the pattern. Cartel wars aren't fought with bullets alone. They're fought with rumors, fear, and strategy. But if the message held even a piece of truth, that's where things get complicated. Why would El Mayo give him up? Dig deep enough and you'll find wild stories everywhere. Claims that Manuel had secret foreign connections, rumors about personal insults that crossed lines, theories that certain killings were orchestrated just to provoke him into unleashing chaos on rivals. Some even suggested he was manipulated into going on violent rampages that conveniently cleaned up enemies for someone higher up. But when you strip away the noise, the simplest explanation usually carries the most weight. After the attack on his family, Manuel reportedly changed, not just angry, unstable. What started as calculated violence allegedly turned reckless. Blood spilled heavy in Culiacán. Political connections that once offered protection reportedly started getting nervous. And when politics gets nervous, protection starts fading. At that point, someone like El Mayo would only have limited options: handle it internally or let someone else do the job, and letting the army handle it, that's cleaner, quieter, no fingerprints. There's also the possibility that there was no grand conspiracy at all. Maybe he really did just run into a military patrol, or maybe he went looking for smoke himself. Scouts, halcones, likely warned him about troop movement. Given his history of confronting federal forces, he may have taken their presence as a challenge. An intrusion on territory he believed was his. It wouldn't have been the first time he squared up with the military, but this time the numbers weren't in his favor. When he realized how boxed in he was, he tried to escape. That's when the second claw of that pincer maneuver closed in behind him, cut off the exit. No more hills to hide in. Reports suggest he was shot while trying to flee, a detail that mirrors how Heriberto Lascano met his own end. Then there's the skull fracture rumor. In the chaos of a firefight, adrenaline runs wild. Soldiers react fast, sometimes instinctively. A rifle butt swung in the heat of confrontation isn't unheard of. If something like that happened after he was already down, it would raise serious questions about excessive force. And if that were the case, it wouldn't be surprising for such a detail to quietly disappear from official paperwork. Because in operations like that, reports tell one version of the story, the streets tell another, and somewhere between those two versions is the truth, buried deep, just like the man they called El Ondiato,